Emily, great to see you. Welcome to Pop Alternative.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to chat with you about this film. I get that script to screen journey is really interesting to me because I feel like depending on the project, whether it's a film or a TV series, it's different each time based on the
Yeah.
role and everything. But with Autumn and the Black Jaguar, like what was that script to screen journey like for you? Like reading it and actually going and filming it, so to speak. I'm curious about that.
Well, the magic of this film is really on the ground. I think some scripts really do lift off the page in a sense. I think there are those scripts.
Yeah.
But this story, because it was all about environment and the really a global message, really being in the thick of it was part of its je ne sais quoi, like it
Yeah.
was just so magical. And obviously we shot with these beautiful creatures that were very much their own beings and had their own, life going on. And getting to be with them was such a privilege. So
Absolutely. You're fantastic in this film. Lumi is fantastic in this film.
she's fantastic.
I'm wondering, there's a lot of kind of preparation involving kind of like Zoom conversations and chatting with like your fellow cast and writers and directors before going to film. But I'm curious if there's a lot of conversations with Lumi like on the day specifically shooting certain scenes, or is that all of that kind of preparation and game plan done before filming? Is there anything that happens on the day specifically?
Oh yeah. I mean, the beauty of filming with someone like Lumi and of someone who's Lumi's age as well, um, you get to play with that energy. And that energy comes with such a freshness, I feel we can forget or we lose along the way. And being with her allowed for such lightness, right? And I think that that's all something we could have a little bit more of. There's definitely rehearsal and there was definitely prep, but it was a lot of us. I mean, we spent a lot of time together. It was a lot of us bonding, and we became fast friends just
Yeah.
like that over the art form, but just over, who she was. She's such a wonderful, beautiful soul, and getting to spend time with her was a dream.
It's almost like you knew what I was going to ask because that answer was like perfect segue to my next question.
Oh yeah.
But it's like, so much happens before you go to camera on something like this. So from an acting storyteller perspective, you can see it as two journeys, right? Before filming something and then after filming something, or do you see it as one big journey with multiple steps in between? I'm curious about that.
I guess I think when you have distance from a project that is wrapped, you see it as one big process
Yeah.
to an extent. But the magic of why I became an actor sort of lies somewhere in the in between. So
Mhm.
for me, a journey of a character, there's an anchor there. Um,
Yeah.
the process of stepping out of character and sort of, dissolving that little bit and like what parts stick around, sort of what you learned from that character or how you changed because of that character, because that's what storytelling is. We all
Yeah.
just want to be affected. And, as an actor, you kind of get the malleable part of that. But this sort of the becoming and the being has such an energy to it that there is its own world within that. I think as a production standpoint and a storytelling standpoint, you can look at it from the whole thing. And like it's all this amoeba that's just this like beautiful thing that you put together with a huge collaborative team. There's not one person that is a part of that team that is lesser than the other. Like we need everyone who's there to put their
Oh, I
best.
can't even imagine with this film, like the crew,
Yeah.
like, could we give a shout out to the crew of
The
Autumn and the
crews.
Black Jaguar?
Yeah, amazing. We had a Quebecois crew, we had our Mexican crew, we had everybody together working from our French crew from France as
Mhm.
well. It was a mishmash of crews who, and every country has a different way of working too. I don't know if you've worked in, a different crews in
Yep.
different countries. There's different rules, there's different lingo, there's different protocols, things like that. And to have everybody together was just so cool because you have this mismatch of ways things are done, and everyone's like, "Oh, I'll take some of that. I'll take some of that. We'll put some pepper some of that in there."
Absolutely. And it's interesting because you identified in your answer to the journey question that like it is all storytelling, whether it's like, a TV show or a film and the certain characters, it's different preparation, but it's all storytelling. So I'm wondering for you, how separate are past projects and past journeys compared to something like this? Like, do you bring mindsets preparation from things like Arrow, Queen of the Ring to something like Autumn and the Black Jaguar? Or like, are they completely separate once you wrap them? I'm curious about that.
As in, is the process separate or
Process, mindset, I mean, experience, different characters, different worlds. But I feel like I asked this question because it's all storytelling at the end of the day, right? And you're bringing yourself to all these characters, right? If you think about it.
yeah, I mean, I guess I wonder if I'll have a different answer to this if I get to ask this again. I think what came up for me while you were explaining that was you kind of have to get out of your own way, right? No matter what. So, depending on where you are in your life, and this I guess could be a lesson for almost anything, you will have to do something different maybe to get out of your own way. But the idea is to get out of your own
Yeah.
way. Um, and when it comes to preparing for a character who is a person who just wants to live and have a good day every day, they want to wake up and have a good day. You have to know what that means for them. And so choosing those circumstances for them might be different than yours, but it's still about, making space for them. And that goes to your life, that goes with your relationships, that goes with, your appointments and where you live in the world and your family, your friends, your children, your, pets. And you bring all of that and you try to fill up a character.
Yeah.
And hopefully the character, comes to you a little bit. There's a little bit of a welcoming in a spirit as well.
Since I started producing, I feel like a lot of my questions, this is the stuff I get really interested in, like the craft kind of component of it. And I think like a lot about this because it's interesting because it's like, I feel like I've worked on a few movies that were like different genres, different crews, but it's like, at the end of the day, like you're going into like a storytelling journey. So I just find it interesting too, right? And like the scale of a lot of things that you've worked on I've differed, right? Like there's been bigger things and smaller things. I'm a big wrestling fan, so like I cannot wait to see that film. I can't wait.
Oh, excellent.
I can't wait. What can you tell me a little bit about learning experiences on Autumn and the Black Jaguar? Because whether you've been in a set one time or thousands of times, you're always going to learn something new that you could take for future projects. So were there any specific ones with this project, learning experience wise?
Well, I have to commend Lumi for that, and our writers and directors, Prune and Jill. They're a creative couple and a couple, and there's a I think I talked about the sort of the lightness and the magic of this, right?
Yep.
That's something we forget,
Yep.
I think, as we get older. And I think that the one thing I took away from this was sort of the reminder of that.
Yep.
And how it's accessible. Like you don't lose it. You just have to be open to it. Like there's some sort of joy there that we can have so easily diminished as we go through our day of routine or, expectation in a sense.
Yeah.
So
it's
Lumi taught me a lot.
It's really cool because this project and then the other two I brought up, like Arrow and Queen of the Ring, it's funny because there's two types of kind of like mindsets I guess you have to be in for all of those projects. There's the physical kind of component of things, and then there's the mental component. Exactly. And then the mental component of things. How do you balance those two? Do you see them as like a tag team kind of working together? Or are there some days where you're focusing on like the mental, emotional kind of scenes of certain things, and then you have days where you're like coordinating with the stunt team and figuring all that out? Like, I'm just curious, or is it all like the same kind of mindset throughout the whole process?
Well, you touched on a few things, right? Like I think when you're building a character, you want to have the truth be there.
Yeah.
Right. And so something like something like Jaguar, it was really great that we were shooting in the heat because it was hot in our movie, it's like, but if it wasn't, you have to sort of bring that to the table. My character in Jaguar, she had a very severe fear of leaving the house.
Yeah.
So knowing what that feels like, that anxiety when you're outside the house, you have to bring that. You have to feel that. You have to let that in, that terror. So when things, if we're figuring out a stunt and stuff, it's very important to be like safe and know exactly what you're doing. And that's all the prep and technical in there. And you have to have that foundation. But when you get to acting and you get to stepping in, they become one because you need this to be so full. Things that get physical, or if you need to change your body for something, that is all part of the same thing because you want the spine of the character, right? Like, sort of in Jaguar, you want the sort of spine of her fear, right? Like it all needs to be there, but they are together as one. Did that answer your question?
It absolutely did. Because I find it interesting because it's like, that is something that I think a lot of people don't think about when you watch a TV show that has everything. It's got the adventure component of it, but it's got kind of the heartfelt moments of it. There's different scenes and it's like one actor, but I feel like the switch has to be flipped a little bit where you're really focusing on like the high octane stuff. And then there's always kind of those slow burn kind of moments and those heart to heart moments like you have like with Lumi and everything. So I just find that fascinating to me, if that makes sense.
I think in terms like when you're sewing scenes together and you're shooting out of order, you have to know where you've come from,
Yeah.
and you have to put that velocity of emotion and feeling through your body before. You
Mhm.
have to know what that feels like, and then be able to call upon it in a sense. It's not that you're falsifying it. You're going, oh, what did that feel like? And
Yep.
you let yourself experience it.
Mhm.
Um, when you have those heartfelt moments that are they're a truth. If they really affect you, there's a huge truth to those actors, that performance, the way the camera's moving. There's just an essence to it.
Mhm.
The same goes to when you're seeing like a rad stunt scene. You're going, oh, their muscles are engaged. There's so much pace. There's the editor is just crushing it with the scene. The director's getting the camera in there. There's a truth to what that feeling is, right?
It's so true. And you have an incredible body of work of different kind of worlds we talked about, where you've worked on indie films, you worked on things that were like kind of bigger scale. And I'm just wondering, before we wrap up quickly, do you have to ask in regards to something like Arrow or something bigger scale that you worked on, when does it start kind of sinking in for you how big something like Arrow was? Was it when you finally did the conventions? Was it after a couple of seasons? Like, I'm just curious about that quickly.
Well, TV's a different, I mean, so far my experience with TV has been a different thing,
Yeah.
because it's sort of a slow, I wouldn't say it's a slow burn. It's a gradual connection for the audience,
Yeah.
right? As we see more of it, we feel more connected to these characters, to their lives, to their story. Like something's happening to us where we're like, we're growing with them.
Mhm.
This is happening to them. Well, I just had something happen in my life where the emotion seems kind of the same. I don't know if a superhero in their own life is going out and taking care of business, but maybe a similar feeling that is associated on the screen. So I don't know if things ever hit fully. I like to work. I love to act. I want to know who the next character is. I'm just so excited. That kind of feeling. So my energy is in there because I'm just hoping the stories are going off, and I don't know if the size of something.
Mhm.
I don't know if I can think of size. I don't even know if I think of size of something, if that
I
makes
feel
sense.
also, I feel like it's like a size, but it's also kind of a range thing, a reach, well, not range, a reach too, right? Like you look at something like a lot of those superhero the content, it just became so global so quick at some point. And I feel like that's when I feel like there's situations though where like you say you don't think about it, but I feel like there's situations where it's like hard not to think about the scale and the reach of certain things.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's an interesting thing to measure because how do you measure a year, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you measure something?
Yeah,
I'm not
absolutely. We're bringing
I'm
up
not
some
sure.
pretty deep things. We're bringing up
Mhm.
some interesting
Getting
things.
there. We're
But
getting
I
there.
can't
We
wait
should
for
call. We
people.
should get my therapist in here. We get her to answer this stuff.
No, I can't wait for people to see you in Autumn and the Black Jaguar. You're fantastic in this film. Nationwide, January 17th in theaters. Emily, so great chatting with you. Thank you so much for your
Yes.
time.
So great chatting with you. Come back to Canada and film some more movies,
Absolutely.
pal.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.